All right, can everybody hear me? All right, good afternoon. All right, so much fun this morning. I thought we'd do it again this afternoon, right? Don't worry, this won't become a habit. I'm not going to steal all of your time every drill. Since we had the fuel cell so well set up, had an opportunity to address the wing kind of outside of the public forum of the change of command, where we had a lot of community and media. And this just gives me an opportunity to speak directly to the wing and let you know a little bit about where I'm coming from as probably a little bit of an outsider and where I think we're headed. So appreciate you taking the time for this. We were going to do quarterly awards, but because we're flying missions today, we had a few of them out, so we decided to punt that. But what I'd like to do is recognize people publicly in front of the wing, just so we can see who's doing good work and recognize them. So going forward, we'll look to do that in future iterations of this. So I think we've got a couple of slides, and then I'm going to open it up to questions after that. So really what I want to get into is not a lot of details and specifics today on what our future vision and priorities is going to be, because we're still going to iron that out in a few months, and so that's going to be coming down. But what I wanted to talk about is just kind of what we're here to do. So if you've read any Simon Sinek or listened to any of his speeches, his big thing is you always start with why. So we'll start with that. So why are we all here, right? And that answer may be different depending on where you're coming from, how long you've been here, what you're trying to get out of this experience. But everyone should have that why of what the purpose is of serving in the Air Guard. And I can just tell you from a personal perspective, the reason that I'm still serving after 19 years and still, willing to continue serving in the out years is because of the team. It's the interactions with the people. Okay, it's not necessarily out of some great patriotism or anything like that, but it's the fact that I have people that are counting on me, and vice versa, and I get great satisfaction out of doing that, especially when it comes to flying and executing missions. And so that's what's kept me in, that's what's kept me going, and ultimately got me to this point. So I'm sure it's different for you, but as you think about, if you travel in for drill, as a DSG or you're a full-timer, always trying to come back to the purpose, and what keeps you motivated and trying to do that. So the bottom part of that slide has the real simple graphic of where we are, where we live as a wing in relation to national defense. So lots of people throw around the national defense strategy and strategy in general, and strategy is really tough. Strategy is, it's tough to quantify, it's tough to measure, and it's really tough to execute sometimes. And the great news is that we don't have to worry about strategy in terms of our mission, right? Like, we live at the tactical realm of operations. So in all of our mission sets, we are beholden to combatant commanders to be trained in a skill level, to deliver to the supported command a tactical tool, if you will. So we're a tactical tool to support the national defense strategy, but we don't have to necessarily create strategy here. So don't get too wrapped around the axle about what are we doing strategically and this and that and the other thing. It's really when you're here and you're doing your drills. Look at your skills training. I want you to be as skilled as you are in your AFSC as possible. Continue to progress throughout that training, and then that feeds into more of the operational realm, which we don't even really touch from like a AOC standpoint or anything like that. So that's where I see us living, and I don't see that changing at all. Next slide, please. All right. So a lot of you probably seen this picture before. I think it's made the rounds on social media. I like this picture because you know, the first thing you think about is, what's that eagle looking at? And maybe it's a fish underwater, you know, maybe it's his own reflection. But what I kind of take away from this is, what does that eagle see if it sees its reflection in the ice? You know, does it see an eagle? Does it see a sharp beak and claws and all these, you know, these big wings that it has and all these tools that it has? Or does it see a dove? And then relaying that to us, what do we see when we look in the mirror as a wing? You know, do we see all the specialties, all the skills that we have in the wing and everything that we can bring to bear with all 1,100 people together? So do we have an accurate reflection of where we're at? And I'll get to that a little bit later of what that accurate reflection is, but I think it's important. I think it's important to understand our strengths and our weaknesses so that we can get better from there, okay? So, next slide, please. And then I just think this is a cool picture of an airplane flying, because I like to fly airplanes, and I'm really happy to be qualified in a C-130, and I'm really blessed, and I know all of you feel that you're blessed to live in a beautiful place where we have this wonderful scenery, and we have the opportunity to contribute to a mission where we put airplanes in the sky, and we contribute to the joint fight. I don't put this up there to say the preeminence of the airborne assets, but also to highlight the fact that there's a lot that goes into getting this picture taken, right? So this whole team concept of if we can't get through the gate and protect our base with our defenders, if we can't keep our infrastructure up to speed with our CE troops, if we don't fix the airplanes with our maintenance group, if we don't have trained pilots and air crew to fly, brief and debrief these missions, and if we don't have a medical group to keep us all healthy, then this picture doesn't exist. So all of you should be proud to see pictures like this, not only because it's really cool, but because every single one of you has a role to play in making that happen. And that's no small thing. It's actually a pretty big deal. You know, people that come from outside of the gates and walk around and look at what we do are just in awe of it. And I think we take it for granted a little bit because we've been here and we go, yeah, I mean, those guys are over there doing that and we're doing this, but they don't see that how all this ties together and when it's working well, you know, has this really nice end result. So, next slide. All right, so where are we going from here? Like I said, I wasn't gonna get real detailed today, but I wanted everybody to know, and it's a little bit hard to read, sorry about that, so I'll verbalize it, of what the next steps are from today, and then what I kind of see the next year looking like as we go forward. So I talked about the accurate reflection and understanding what the accurate reflection of us is. And the way that we're gonna do that is through a DEOX, a climate survey. So I know a lot of you are thinking to yourself, I don't want to do another survey. All we do is surveys, and we never get anything out of them, frankly. So I hear you. I get that. There's a couple reasons that I'm going to foot stomp this as something I think is important is, A, we have to do it. So it's whenever you get a new commander, you have to do one within 6 months. So this was ordered from the state level because we got a new tag. So think of this as a 2-for-1. You're only gonna have to do one of these because this will count for the wing as well as for the state. So that's a good thing. So I just decreased your survey by 1. And the second thing is because it actually does matter. Okay, I'm gonna look at this, I'm gonna get the results of it, and then we're gonna take the results of the feedback that we get from you, and we're gonna roll that into our overarching mission, vision, and priorities for the wing. So whatever you guys say is what the leadership team is gonna take and work off of. So please take it seriously, please participate. If you don't participate, your voice won't be heard, and we won't know we will potentially have a blind spot in our organization, and then we won't have an accurate reflection of where the wing is right now. So that's what I want, is that accurate reflection, where we're at right now. And then the group commanders and senior enlisted leaders and my command team are gonna go off the base and have a strategic offsite where we can actually nug down on this stuff and come up with the commander's intent and then the mission and vision and priorities for the wing. We'll make those very clear, very easily executable, but very purposeful in terms of this is where the wing is going. Like I said this morning, we're not fundamentally changing what we're doing, right? We are a tactical airlift wing. That's a really good place to be when I look at strategy, because it's a core capability that's not going away. It's even gonna be more necessary in a near-peer fight. But that being said, just trying to get the, hey, what does the future look like going forward? That will be delivered prior to the state of the state in February when we go back to NGB. So until that time, we have our existing mission and priorities, and those are gonna remain the same, okay? So don't wait for any further guidance from me or the command team because it's already out there, but just know that we're working it to update that, and then once we have that, we'll start to move out and execute. So the big rocks for 2020, and there's one more that isn't on the slide that I'll talk about for 2021, but chronologically, big rocks, the big things that are gonna drive the next year. The way I view next year is we just came off an AEF and an RCP, big deployments. We don't have one of those similar scaled deployments until March of 21. We're gonna need to get spun up to meet that deployment timeline, but it's also a chance for us to reset the wing and get ready for these big inspections that are coming at the end of 20. So we need to train, get ourselves trained up on our new tasks that have dropped in the new fiscal year. We need to get our readiness up, and we need to innovate where we can, okay? So the way that we're gonna do that is through action, right? So Colonel Kirkwood and Colonel Fugit, maintenance group, are gonna take a 3-ship to Yokota on a flyaway, and we're gonna actually practice our O-plans that we're dock tasked against. And we're gonna integrate with the active duty when we do that. So that's, again, shifting towards Indo-PACOM, looking more towards the near-peer fight, and how prepared are we to go into those regions and do that. My thought process there is if we shift and look west, we'll be prepared for anything that happens in the counter-terror realm, which is most likely where we'll be going for our AEF. Then in June, we're gonna have our super drill. So everyone should have seen that, and if you haven't, now you know. We're having a super drill in June, so middle 2 weeks, and then July there will be no drill. Max participation with max AT in between, so hopefully we can get 9 straight solid training days to knock out all of our required training and really come together as a wing, get a lot done, sprint for 9 days, embrace the suck, and then give you back some quality of life in July. So I think that's gonna be a good thing. My leadership has told me that we'll get a lot out of this, and so we have it approved, and so that is also gonna be our focus again on some more advanced readiness topics. Then we get into the inspection season at the end of the year. So November, mission assurance assessment, followed up by the big one, which is the UEI in December. That's our check ride for those aviators in the room. That's our grade as a wing, and that's gonna determine potentially how long I get to stand up on this stage, right? But also where we're at. And all joking aside, I know that we have the propensity to do really well on that inspection. I just want to capture that and show that to the inspection team when they come out. So I think we're on the right track for that. We're going to continue to focus on it because I think it'll pay dividends again going into the deployment cycle in 2021. And that's the last thing that didn't make the slide is we are going to go back out the door in 2021, which means we need to start backing that timeline up to make sure that we don't get ourselves into a place where we don't have orders, we don't have uniforms, we don't have everything done, and putting people in places where their mind is not focused on the mission piece. So you can help me out with that as well. So that's what we're doing. I'm excited. I'm really glad to be here. I think we've got a great team, and I really appreciate you guys supporting me up to this point and welcoming me into the unit. I have great expectations for what we're going to be able to do, and I think just getting that focus part right and making sure that we're aligned across all of our units is really going to help us to reach that end state. So I told you I didn't want to talk very long. I wanted to open this up for questions. I didn't have any plans, so this is a free-for-all. So you can play Stump the Dummy, and that's okay. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know. But I do want to open it up for questions, and we'll do that now. I can wait. This is easy.
Colonel Hammons, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. That was a plant. No, I'm kidding. So, born and raised in Texas, went to the Air Force Academy, 1996, with Mike, graduated in 2000, and went into the active duty. Was a F-15C pilot operationally at Elmendorf, and then variety of training assignments. I taught some student pilots in the training pipeline for Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals, and then I was F-16 pilot, both in the aggressors and the test world for a number of years. Went to Poland for a year and taught the Polish Air Force how to fly F-16s, and then came back to Nellis a few years back, again as a F-16 test pilot, and then got my golden ticket to be in the Nevada Guard last year, moved up to Reno this year. Youngest of three, I got two older brothers. I'm the black sheep of the family. They're both doctors, so that makes Thanksgiving awesome. They're all still back in Texas, but I feel, like I said, like I'm the lucky one because really like outdoor stuff, so this is perfect fit for my family and I. We love hiking, skiing, fishing, so looking forward to doing that. Don't call me on the weekends this winter. Call Colonel Manson.
Oh, hey. Anybody got questions? Come on. Not you, Matt. Just kidding. Come on.
Hello, Colonel Hammons. I'm Sergeant Greiner. Pleasure to talk before you, sir. My question for you is, how do you plan to engage the community? Do you want to be very involved in our community, like with base tours, having things going on in the community, or do you want to be, I guess, a little bit more not standoffish, but kind of quiet? How do you want to engage the community, sir?
That's another softball. So, really want to be engaged with the community. I think it's important. One of my initial observations when I got here was that even though we have good ties with the community, there's still a lot of people in Reno and Sparks, as a relatively small population, that don't know what we do here, that we're even here. So the most common question I got when I moved here is, are you stationed out at Fallon? Which I've heard from other folks as well. So I think the community piece is really important. Obviously, we need to be strong partners with Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. We need to keep up our community ties with the Reno Police Department and everything we're doing on the resiliency side. There's so many resources out there in our community. We're going to try to tap into some of the innovation cells that are out there with UNR and some of the tech sector out there. So I will be out there, Sergeant Greiner. I'm sure you'll make sure that happens. But no, I'm not going to hide in my office. What else?
Colonel, real quick, I know that the wing is looking towards J models. What other mission sets have you been involved in that we might be looking at maybe for other organizations here?
Sure. That's a really good question. It's there's a couple of facets to that. So working down south, I was really involved with the 232nd and what they're going through right now with their realignment, and then the stand-up of the Virtual Test and Training Center, and then looking at other initiatives down south. Those are really important. They're high priority items from the tag level, and we'll continue to support those as we support the 232nd right now. For the wing itself, what we've kind of come up with is that having an organic guard presence here in Reno with a flying mission that's operationally tasked is really important. It meets all of the guard capstone principles, and it is one of the measures of the health of a state when NGB and other MAGCOMs look at you. So that is something that as we look to get a new platform with J models, I think that buys us a longer time frame. I think we need to compete to get J models, and we're working hard to do that. I think the AES is the other one that the wing needs to pay attention to. We're in the competition for that, and AES is a little bit further along in the process than J model is. So we could potentially find out about AES on a relatively soon timeline compared to J models. So both of those things, if they happen, would mean quite a bit of a transition for the wing. I would see us growing in that case if that decision was made to give either or both of those missions. But it is going to cause some growing pains in terms of how, realigning MCRs, things like that. So we're also aware of those types of challenges and have the groups involved with those discussions. And that's things that we talked about at our first state strategic meeting, is what does Nevada really want to be when it grows up, and really paint a picture for NGB and for the MAGCOMs that shows how this can work. But ultimately, having been up here and seen the goodness of this place, I think it's really, really important that we have a presence here, in the north, at this base where we have all this great infrastructure, we have all the human capital. We also have to look down south because of the population and the demographics and the mission sets down there. But I'd say that's not at the expense or detriment of the wing up here, if that makes sense. So it's a tough problem, because anytime you're asking to grow, you're competing with 53 other states and territories, and they don't just hand you that. So as General Burke said, when you're talking about almost $1 billion of materiel that the federal government is willing to give to a guard unit to operate, that requires a lot of trust. So how do we build trust? We're pretty trusted at NGB right now because our knee board is so good. And that sounds mundane, but it's really not. Because when they're comparing 54 states and territories with multiple different missions and platforms and sizes of squadrons and everything else, The constants are some of the kneeboard things, so readiness metrics, IMR, DDRP, all those things that get looked at. And we're in a really good spot, pretty good spot for that right now. But we have to stay competitive to do that, and then we have to have the strategic message that aligns with our state's intent, and it makes sense from a national A&G perspective that J models would come to Reno or an AES would come to Reno. So trust me, there's been a lot of discussions this weekend and all the time about that with our state, but we are working hand in hand with the state. And one thing I think that is important for everybody to understand is that as a one-wing state, we get a lot of attention from our state leadership. And that's okay, because they're another tool that we can use to get to our objectives. And so we need to engage with our state leadership. We need to be good partners. We need to be good communicators with them. So I don't see our position with the state as adversarial at all. I see them as an enabler to help us get to where we need to go. Thanks for the question. Wait for it. Got one over here. Somebody got a mic?
I had a question too, if
Okay.
you wouldn't mind me jumping out of order. Colonel Hammons, Technical Sergeant Wake, I just wanted to know if there were any updates or any changes on the plans for the wing to expand into the southern part of the state, short-term and long-term?
Sorry, can you say that again? There was some jet noise.
Plans for the wing to expand into the southern part of the state, southern Nevada?
That's a kind of a tough one to answer. I think there's the ability for us to participate with what goes on in the southern part of the state as a wing. I'll give you a couple of examples. Maybe that'll make it clear. So, has everybody heard of Red Flag exercise down at Nellis? It's a big exercise, multinational, joint. It's our largest airborne exercise. So we've participated in that with our C-130s for a number of years, as well as Green Flag. But I think there's space down south and assistance needed down south where we can get more facets of the wing down there to broaden some of the horizons, to integrate with the active duty. Things that we're looking at is security forces, so Major Colvette's looking at that for the next Red Flag iteration. Some of our other MSG partners potentially down there. And I think, as we look at some of the challenges we have of we're recruiting really well down south, but that places a burden on bringing those DSGs up north every month. So I think we need to look a little bit more creatively at potential ways that folks from the south can drill down south, even though they may be aligned to the wing. That's partly wrapped up in fiscal issues that we're facing right now with some of the reduced training budgets that we have, but it's something that we're going to explore. I think it's good from a career standpoint because I think it gets us out of our bubble a little bit, see some of what's happening down at Nellis, integrate with the active duty and reserve components that are down there, and come back, a little bit better, more well-rounded, and bring those lessons learned back to the wing. So as far as moving any part of the wing down south, I don't see that happening in the near or long term. That's not really on our radar. We've already got the 232nd down at Creech. The only thing we're really looking to do with the 232nd is officially move them from Creech to Nellis, because I think Nellis is where we need to be, especially as we're getting out of the remote piloted aircraft business. So that's about the biggest shift that I see down south right now, but that's a little bit outside of the wing. Another question?
Hi, Colonel. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, what are your FSS expectations from us? If there's anything that we need to improve on, if there is, do you have a growth plan for us? And new ideas to look into to help improve our unit that we can do for you in the unit.
Okay. And was that FSS specific? You want to grow the FSS? Somebody write that down. Grow the FSS. I'm going to leave that up to your commander. I've delegated command authority down to the group and the squadron commanders, the lowest level possible, so we will come up with a good plan. We don't have enough resources across the wing. We know that. Okay, there's competition for where our full-time resources go. Ultimately, we're going to have a conversation among the command teams and decide where those scarce resources need to be placed in order for us to facilitate our mission. And that's why it's so important that we have a clear focus on what the mission, vision, and priorities are, because that helps guide those manning decisions. Otherwise, we get in this situation where, yeah, FSS needs help, okay, LRS needs help, ops needs help, maintenance needs help. I completely understand if, you know, as the wing commander, if I could just snap my fingers and make, you know, 100 new full-time bodies, we would be in great position, but that's not where we live. So, and that's true across the Air Force. It's not just the Air Guard either. So everybody's competing for those resources. Again, we got to show, we got to prove why we deserve them, and then look at creative ways of moving manpower around. So my command team will be all over that. Colonel Manson, Chief, and all the group commanders. It's a good question, though. That was a tough one. Need some more tough questions.
Hey, I think I can address part of that too. I want you to understand the FSS got 3 temp techs this year, is that correct? Okay. We're trying to help you out. We're trying to put the manning where it's at. If the Intel Squadron grows to a group, that's part of our negotiations in the SATAF as they grow, that the FSS grows, that finance grows a little bit along with that manpower growth. If we get bigger in the South from a squadron to a group level, again, we need more support structure in the FSS in finance. So, not there yet, but we're not growing that much right now. So, partly if we get an AES, maybe we better talk about that. If we add another 100 bodies, so.
I did forget to mention, though, that the first official act that I had as a wing commander is I'm giving you all an extra hour of sleep tomorrow. So, you're welcome. You're welcome. Nobody told me I could stop time, so I was like, yeah, this is easy.
Hello, Colonel. Tony
Hi.
Midmore, Finance.
See you, Tony.
So bring this back down to the small level. Every wing commander, and I've been out here a long time, seen a lot of them, every wing commander out here lays awake at night, hoping and praying that nobody leaves Sangha, DUI, kills a family on the road, something like that. We've had ones that were rah-rah, let's keep the place open, high roller spirit. We've had ones that weren't drinkers themselves and really wanted to shut the place down. My understanding is it's one of, I believe, only 2 all-ranks clubs left in the Air Guard. Curious if you put thought into it yet of what's your take on Sangha, supported or too worried about your liability?
That's a great question. No, that was not planted. So, my tenure would be relatively short if I'm going to stand up here and say that that Sangha is not going to exist, right? So, here's the reality of it, right? And maybe just understanding a little bit about where I came from, you know, as a fighter pilot. You know, I grew up. It was a different culture back then. But I'm very understanding of the heritage piece and how important that is to, again, bring us together. Part of what I've directed the groups to do is to make sure that we have fun as a wing. So I'm not going to be the fun police, and I'm not going to sit here and say that we're not going to have Sangha going forward. Now, I'll be an honest broker with you and tell you that there's that pressure, and I'm sure that goes back a ways. There is that pressure of when we have incidents that come out of Sangha, we get a lot of attention for those sorts of things, okay? So I have a responsibility as a commander to ensure the morale and welfare of our organization, and that's a double-edged sword. So I need to make sure the well-being of all 1,000 people in this wing, but we need to be safe. We need to have fun in a safe manner. I've said it before, you know, Senga is a national treasure, but we don't want to lose that, right? So we have to be smart about this. Don't tie my hands. Have a plan. Have a plan. It's 2019. It's almost 2020. There's Uber, there's Lyft, there's Wingman. There's having a plan before you have that first drink. So for the good of the organization, for the good of the heritage, for the good of everything that place represents, please just be smart about it. I'm not going to make a unilateral decision anytime soon, okay? But I may ask questions about what is the proper role and function of our private organizations on base. And I think that's fair to ask. So, and that goes for everything. I may ask a question. I'm not actually poking or trying to probe. I may just not know. So just because I'm asking the question doesn't mean I'm not satisfied with where we're at right now. It may just be the new guy needing some background information. Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about, as almost a 32-year member in the Nevada Guard where Senga sits, we can't have the kind of stuff that's happened lately. It's good for no one. Senga is a place where you still wear this uniform, whether you're in uniform or not. It's a place to go in there and have a good time, have a couple drinks with your friends, morale, esprit de corps, enjoy yourself. If you're going to have more than that, get a ride, get an Uber, get a Lyft. We cannot have that stuff. I'll tell you the job I just came from, your generals have no tolerance and patience. If we have sexual assaults, sexual harassments, inappropriate conduct going on in Senga, it's not going to go well. So this isn't his decision. This is all of your decision to keep that club open and behave in a professional manner while you're there. Any other questions on that?
Sir, so we hear diversity and inclusion thrown around all the time. What are you committed to doing to make sure that we are fostering diversity in all aspects of the mission and being an inclusive environment for everybody that you represent?
That's a great question. So the question was, how are we going to foster a diverse and inclusive environment in the wing? We have a diversity council. I think we need to focus that charter, make sure that is as productive of a council as it can be. And then as commanders and leaders, we need to make sure that we're force developing across the board and make sure that we're being inclusive as we make those decisions, because that is one of our 5 strategic priorities. Just understand that is going to be a consideration. And you know, one thing I want to clarify on diversity, there's actually a mathematical equation, and I won't get too geeky on it, but there's actually a mathematical reason that diversity is better than a homogeneous environment. It's because the more diverse perspectives you bring, if you think of it like a toolbox, I might have a dozen tools in my toolbox, and Dave Manson might have 15 in his toolbox, but his are a little bit different than mine. He's only got one tool. It's a hammer. But that's why I've got him. So if you bring together a group of people and they all have a certain amount of tools and you start combining those, mathematically you get up into the millions of iterations of potential answers that you can get to. So I think a lot of people misinterpret diversity and inclusion as gender diversity or identity diversity, but diversity is actually diversity of thought, right, and diversity of perspective. So that's what we really need to focus on. That's where the council needs to do that work, and we need to find people from different backgrounds that have different tools in their toolkit so that we can get to those better solutions. So that's really my take on it, and I think that ultimately it enables our warfighting capability better when you have a diverse group versus everyone kind of thinking along within the same left and right bounds on everything. Does that make sense?
Hey, sir. Sergeant Gunn from Communications Flight. My question is, there's a lot of importance put on to the tangible, i.e. The flying mission. Is there an importance towards the logical, like cyber mission with security? So, thank you.
Thank you. Question is there importance put on the cybersecurity mission? So what I was working on down at Nellis, Major Green is laughing, this virtual test and training center, I have a pretty good idea of how important cybersecurity is to our national defense. So it's a critical part. Our infrastructure rests on it. If we don't have secure systems, if we don't have redundant systems, if we don't have reliable systems, then those tangible pieces like the airplanes flying don't occur. So yeah, it's critical. Anything to add, Major Green? Okay. Everybody's getting warmed up now. It's awesome.
Afternoon, Colonel. I was wondering if there was any plans for expansion of the base gym facility, perhaps a larger building or newer equipment for people that like to lift or exercise during the day.
You're saying you've already lifted all the weights in there? You can go back through it multiple times, you know. Larger gym. So I guess I'll take that opportunity to talk a little bit about our installation development plan and where we're at with that. Because again, just like personnel, when we talk about facilities and resources, we have to make decisions on what the priority is. So we were really lucky to get our ops facility upgraded and done. We've been very fortunate over the years to get a lot of MILCON and to get a lot of facilities upgrades done. We still have a couple that are problem children, as I'll put them. And the biggest one is actually the headquarters building. So you go, all right, so the new wing commander is going to stand up and tell me that his headquarters building, he needs a new headquarters building, right? So yes, that's the answer. No, I'm kidding. It's number one on our priority list for a couple of reasons. We're actually going to be able to combine multiple buildings that are on base right now into one, and that's going to reduce our overall footprint and bring us more in line with Air Force standards that are required for an ops headquarter building. So that's our number one priority. And I was up at NGB last week standing on their table asking for that because I've got to put $2.5 million of HVAC remods into the headquarters building just to keep it on life support. The second one is our age and ISO building. Those are really old. Does anybody work in age? And raise your hand. They're all out. Yeah, so I guess it gets pretty cold in there in the winter, and it's about 50 years old. So that's our second priority. As far as the base gym, is Ray around? Let's see him. Was that part of our plan at all? Was that getting soaked up in the headquarters? I can't remember.
Yes, in respect to the base gym, we do have a plan as far as developing the new building 56, is to actually have it part of the two-story floor projected to be part of the headquarters building. But as far as expanding it, there is room for that. It's a matter of just balancing out the space authority so that way we can fit all the other groups into that building as well too. But we do have plans to expand the gym as well, for sure.
There you go.
Sorry, Izzo, where are you? Sorry about that.
Time frame? Somebody said time frame?
Mark Jewell, do you have money to put into new equipment?
So time frame on that MILCON right now is 2025. Trying to get that pushed up, okay? And really 2025 is just a placeholder. All that means is that we're not on the list right now. So part of my strategy is getting out to NGB, making sure they understand how important that is for us. So hopefully we can get that moved up. There is a potential that we can get fallout money to fund that. It's about $15 million. That's not overly large sum of money in terms of national, budget when you look at that. So if there's MilCon out there that can't execute in the out years, because I don't think MilCon this year is going to exist. In the out years, though, we may be able to snatch that if some other state can't execute. So that's what we're trying to do. Good question. We'll put a climbing wall on the 2-story building too. Safety, check that for me. More questions. These are good. Keep them coming. Got one over there. Give me Colonel Manson and work out.
Hello, Colonel. Colonel Sergeant Gilmore. We've talked about expanding and growing. I was wondering if there's any thought of maybe vamping up parking as we continue to grow.
Parking. Hey, Ray, when are we going to get our parking fixed here? It's on the list. It is on the list. It's on our SRM list, so we're actually doing a pavement project this year. So that's going to help us a little bit. We're not going to get a parking garage. And we got 64 acres, and unless I can, depending on how well my meeting with the RTAA goes in 2 weeks, I think we'll probably come out of that with 64 acres. So don't expect that we're getting a lot of land. Not saying it's not going to happen, and I'll do my best. But we're kind of where we're at with the acreage that we've got. But yeah, you want to talk about the parking plan, Ray?
Yes, Colonel. As far as the parking plan for the entire base, I know we're very crunched up with just parking everywhere we go. One of the items that we're talking about is relocation some of the facilities to make sure we meet not just parking space requirements, but also for traditional members too. So one of the items we're looking at is, for one, if we're looking at demoing Building 10, for example, that gives us the opportunity to expand and meet some level of parking requirements when it comes down to how many people are on base, how much are we actually utilizing in terms of space authorizations, all the way to what our room capacity is. So if you put together the actual formula, then you're going to actually see how much more space that we really have. So when it comes down to parking space, one of the areas is actually a relocation of our munition storage area, possibly. If we can have that, then the other caveat to that is we'll have much more space in that area to utilize for parking. But as part of the installation development plan, we do have requirements to actually expand more on the front of the base and as well as the back too.
Excellent, thank you. What else is on your wish list? Gym, parking, movie theater? Yeah, screen's right there. Yeah, BX. I miss the BX. All right. Anybody else? There we go, Chaplain.
Hi, Colonel.
Hi.
Any ideas on keeping the base morale up?
You have any ideas on keeping the base morale up? Yeah, Ray, what's the plan for keeping the base morale up? Hey, I talked to the group commanders right after the change of command today and said one of the mandates of a command team is to have fun. All right, so how do we do that? How do we have fun? You know, I'm not talking about running around with a goofy grin on your face, but it's really job satisfaction and then making time for fun. All right, so if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing and you're just kind of showing up checking a box, that's not going to be a whole lot of fun, and your morale is probably not going to be that high, and we may not keep you for the long term. So supervisors, commanders, you need to take that pulse of your airmen and understand where they're at. And I'm deputizing all of you to check up on your wingmen, supervisors check up on your airmen, and make time for those morale events. And that's really the focus behind the continuation of the Resilience Task Force. So the Resilience Task Force with Allison Pratt, our DPH, Chaplain Crandall, Chief Ash is our HRA out there, and the rest of the community team that we brought in from the outside. So that wasn't a one-time deal, and as commanders and leaders, you should continue those interactions that we had in those small groups to the max extent possible. So this is not formalizing a program, and it's not Green Dot or anything like that, but this is really getting back to basics in terms of looking each other in the eyes, asking how you're doing, making sure everybody's good, taking time to make those little connections throughout the day. That's really how we keep morale high, because if we never move to the right on that spectrum of I'm not happy, not satisfied with my job, now I start to be depressed, now I start thinking in a certain way. If we never let that happen because of all these connections that we have throughout the day, then we kind of beat that down, right? So that's ultimately what it is. So job satisfaction, human connection, this is not stuff that's not doable, right? It's just, we have to be intent about it. Do you have anything to add? No. Yep. Okay. What I talked about? Okay. So one of the things that I talked about with the command team, the question was work-life balance. So I have three kids, 13, 9, and 5, and my wife at home there. So the way that I viewed work-life balance when I was active duty and here is that I tried for a while to be like, this is my work life, and then when I go home, it's my home life, and it didn't work for me. So I kind of wrap it all up into one of like, this is just my Air Force life, and this is what we do. Everybody's kind of signed off on that. And that way I don't have to necessarily feel bad about, hey, whatever day I need to stay late, or maybe some days I need to show up a little bit late because my kid's got something going on. That's just how I approach it. Obviously within your units, you got to figure that out, determining on your work schedules and when you're needed to do things. But just from a kind of holistic mindset, that's how I look at the work-life balance. So I try to make time, take my leave. Please take your leave if you got it, and get away from here and decompress. But I also don't completely divorce, what I do at home from what I do here. It's all just kind of one thing for me. It's just what we do. All right, so I think we're about at our time. Any last rounds? All right, I thank you again. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this gave you a little bit more insight into your command team and what we're thinking about and what direction we're going. And like I said, there's going to be more to follow. We'll probably not have another one of these. I'll talk to the group commanders. At most, it'll be quarterly, potentially half, that we'll kind of get together as a wing. But I do think it's important for some of our junior airmen to hear it directly from me and ask them, see if they can stump the dummy and ask some hard questions. We'll try to roll in the quarterly or the awards next time that we do this, so that we can kind of recognize people as we go along. So anything else, anything I missed? All right, thank you for your time. Carry on. Carry on.